Welcome everyone. It's not enough to just want change. You have to go and make changes by voting only. A very good afternoon to all the participant and faculty members. I, Assistant Professor Akash Gupta, on behalf of Law Club, Prestige Institute of Management and Research Gwalior welcomes you all in the most awaited national webinar on the necessity of voting in democratic country. Prestige Institute of Management and Research Gwalior is a premier institute in the state of Madhya Pradesh, and it is known for its best-in-class education. The institute was established in the year 1997 and has been ranked among the top-notch institutions in the state and was ranked amongst top 16 management institutions of Central Asia by Universal Paris, and the institute is promoted by Prestige Education Foundation. Law Club was established in the same year when the law courses were introduced in the institute in 2017. Since the inception, its main focus to bring out the creativity of an individual and convert into an execution with the proper planning. Club is basically to the student, by the student, and for the student. Soon, Law Club will be hosting National Client Counseling Competition for the law student nationwide. Today, we are conducting national webinar on the necessity of voting in the democratic country, as the right to vote is an essential and the foremost to the vital right available under Constitution of any democratic country. Since 2011, National Voters' Day has been celebrated on January 25th every year, all across the country, to mark the foundation day of the Election Commission of India. The main purpose of the National Voters' Day celebration is to encourage, facilitate, and maximize enrollment, especially for the new voters, detailed to the voters of the country. The day is utilized to celebrate this day in promoting informed participation in the electoral process. Election Commission of India is celebrating the 12th National Voters' Day on 25th of Jan 2022. The theme of this year National Voters' Day, making election inclusive, accessible, and participative. Focusing on Election Commission of India commitment to facilitate active participation of the voters during the election and to make the complete process hassle-free and a memorable experience for all the categories of the voters. So with these lines, I would like to invite Officiating Director, Professor Dr. Tarika Singh, to address the gathering. Ma'am, over to you.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. And I welcome Dr. Neeraj Kumar Jha in this webinar. And I feel extremely proud that he has joined today on such a short notice. Thank you so much, sir. Starting with the voting part, we all understand voting is the most essential process for any nation, where the election of a fair government not only strengthens democracy, but also strengthens the foundation of that nation. Although the provisions related to elections were included with the making of the Constitution of India, today, even after the completion of 72 years of our Constitution, the most important link of our Constitution is a fair and transparent voting process. Election in place of selection is not only a paper process, but also a voice of intelligent citizens of any nation, which culminates in the results. The topic is certainly a very serious one and is related to the role of youth in the elections. Today, we have a special guest with us who is invited to talk more about it. Akash sir, please introduce him to the gathering.
Yeah. Thank you so much, ma'am. Now, we have with us very profound Dr. Neeraj Kumar Jha, Associate Professor, MLA Government College of Art and Commerce, as resource person of the national webinar. Dr. Neeraj Kumar Jha teaches political science at Maharani Lakshmibai Arts and Commerce College, Gwalior. Dr. Jha is an alumnus of University of Delhi and Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. He has been teaching political science to UG, PG, MPhil students and specifically PhD scholars. PhD scholars are doing their coursework for the last 25 years. He has been on the board of the studies of the several institutions. 3 research scholars have completed their PhD under his kind supervision, and many are on the way of doing so. He has been a co-editor of books and research journals. He has numerous chapters and articles published in books and journals, respectively, many of them being international publishers like Sage and Pearson. He has also been the columnist for the magazines, several magazines. Now, I am handing over the session to the resource person. Sir.
Thank you, Dr. Atasudha. I pay my respect to Dr. Nishant Joshi, Director of the Institute, to Dr. Tarika Singh, Deputy Director of the Institute, and Dr. Prabal Pratap Singh, HOD Law. Thank you all for giving me this opportunity to speak on this important topic. I think, am I audible? Is there any problem?
No, sir, perfectly audible.
Thank you. In fact, I was given very little time to prepare. It was a very hectic day for me too, as we were also organizing similar program in the college. And just right now I have got freed from that. Therefore, it is not a structured lecture. Usually what we do, that we prepare our lecture, we don't go speak casually, but I can't help it right now because there was no time as such to prepare a formal lecture. Anyway, I'm speaking on this topic. We'll be conversing on this topic with you all. I'm beginning with the basic problematic. There's so many people in the society, in the student community, and everywhere we meet that some people rather they are not interested in politics. Politics is something which they consider as negative. Hello.
Yes, sir, please, sir.
This is a general approach that they think that politics is something dirty, bad, or negative, in which gentlemanly people should not participate or should not take interest. And in fact, they call it very proud, with a sense of pride, that they don't consider or don't consider politics to be an issue which should be taken into account in their private lives or in their general engagement. This is basically a negative approach to politics, which is not appropriate. Therefore, I'm beginning with my speech with an introduction with the politics. Politics is something very fundamental to our life. The way we live is decided by political processes. Generally, people associate politics with the activities which go with electioneering, or to say that power politics. Because power is associated with politics, many people resort to such means which may not be acceptable to the general public, and that leads to so many confusion in the society. Basically, politics originates from a social necessity, and that is the problem of coexistence. When people live together, there is a problem of co-living, because resources are limited and people have to fight for that. In that context, what comes into play is a conflict among the people. And to speak it very briefly, that politics is that inevitable process of resolving social conflicts. If there would be no politics, then there would be anarchy. Therefore, what is politics? In a very short way, it can be said that politics is the process of the resolution of the conflicts in the society. If there is no politics, there would be chaos all around. And there are mechanisms for resolving such problems. Basically, if you see this problem, rather, if some insight with some deep viewing, then you will find that nature has made man a culture-bearing person. Men or women live in a society, therefore they have been called as social beings. And this is a mechanism. By cooperating with each other, they are able to face the natural challenges, the social challenges, and even their inner conflicts. In fact, there are three things which confront human beings, and human beings in association try to negotiate with these realities. First is the nature. You know that nature is very uncertain. It poses many problems to the human beings. Second is society, social conflicts that people pose problem to each other. And third is the inner man. Man has got many psychological problems. He has many anxieties and so many uncertainties. What do people do? That they face all these problems by associating with each other. And one of the prime component of this association is politics. They organize themselves, and through that organization, they try to meet these challenges. This is the first thing. But what we see is that there is a negative feeling about politics, because you also know, which has been said very famously by Lord Acton, that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Therefore, because politics associated with power, organization itself is associated with some power, people in the helm tend to corrupt, and that causes problem. Now the challenge is, if you don't take interest in politics, if you don't get active in political processes, then the problem is going to harm us. Because if whether one is interested or not, politics affect that person. Imagine the condition of a tribal person living in, suppose, Narmada Valley. He doesn't participate in the political processes, but despite that, as a result of this politics of development, there may be a construction of some dam, and he would be uprooted from his natural habitat. This is a challenge. The challenge is that whether you participate or not, politics is going to affect your life. This has to be understood. Therefore, it is better that we take interest in the political processes and try to influence that by our own standing, our own participation, and our own activism. The important thing is that we all are interested in safeguarding our personal interest. At the same time, you must consider this fact that it is not our personal well-being, but our public well-being is also very important. Suppose somebody gathers a lot of wealth, money, house, everything, and if there is no good law and order in the society, everything is going to be unsafe. You have got a good house, but the street road is not good. In that sense, your housing would be hell, because you can have a very good house, but the approach road is not good. You are going to lead a very bad life. This has to be understood, that politics is something which is necessary for our life. Now I come to the second issue related with this politics, which is the modern politics, which ultimately led to democracy and what has given us the right to vote. This is the what is the essence of modernity? In fact, there are 2 and 3 things which are very important in order to make sense of modern age, because it is modern age which make us the human beings, the individual who has been entrusted with this power to right to vote and decide upon the of the government, the incumbents of the government. Basically, you all must be knowing that the modern process began with there were 3 important movements which occurred during a span of 300 years in Europe: Reformation, Renaissance, and Enlightenment. I'm just reducing those phenomenal events into 2 or 3 points. What was the first thing? First thing was the rationality. Rationality is to see things in a way that things can be verified, which are verifiable. To see things rationally, which can be seen, observed, explained, and proved. That was a new approach. Earlier, the things were decided by belief, faith. If there was some problem, people usually used to say that it is a job of the God, not the government, God. God was the ultimate determiner of everything. Everything was justified in the name of God. In the modern age, faith was replaced by reason. That was the first characteristic of modern age. And second thing, which is very crucial in this context, that modernism led to the rise of individualism, which is also called humanism. It says that an individual or human being is at the center of social construction. The focus of society is individual, and everything should be built around that individual person. Earlier, it was not the individual, but community and society was at the helm of the human existence. Everything was decided by community or society. I'm just explaining this point a bit, that if you take the example of, for example, caste system or the states of Europe, it was not the individual which was important, but its social status was the determining factor. Your life conditions were used to be decided by your social status. For example, as it is happening in the case of caste in our country, that how do you live, with whom you interact, with whom you marry, what is your occupation, everything is decided by caste. Earlier, I'm talking about the caste of some days back. In that sense, there was no place for the individual in the society. But in the modern state, individual has got autonomy and dignity and control over their own lives. That is the crucial aspect of modern age, that everybody is given and everybody's right to live as per his own decisions is the crucial marker of the modern age. And third thing is, which is also very important in that context, or rather in this context, is that belief in human agency. What is the human agency? That people believe that they can change their destiny. Earlier, everything was considered to be a handiwork of the God, the will of the God. Later on, people realized that their co-living can be judged, examined, and can be improved by themselves. They are the masters of their own destiny. And people started to believe in their good or in their ability to change their social existence. And politics was a cheap instrument of changing that politics. Now I'm moving ahead with this explanation of politics and later on modernity. That modern age is the recognition of an individual, his autonomy, his ability to think over, and his willingness to change their destiny. And that later resulted into this democratic spirit. Democracy, we all know very well, that is the rule of the majority, not rule of the majority, rule of the all. It's in actual sense, it results into the rule of majority. But there is something very unavoidable aspect of democracy. Though it is a rule of the majority, but its mandate is to safeguard the rights of the minorities. There are many aspects of this safeguarding of rights. It is the safeguarding of the individual rights against the society, of minorities against the majority, and all against any form of tyranny or authoritarian regime. So this is a comprehensive way of thwarting any attempt to throttle the right of any person, which may occur on account of majority rule, rule of the all against one, or any sort of authoritarian regime. And as an instrument of democracy, a new phenomenon came into existence that is known as constitutionalism. What is constitutionalism? Constitutionalism, in very brief, means a limited government. What is limited government? That there should be some check on the powers of the government. The government functionaries should not have the absolute right to rule over the lives of the people. There must be certain checks on the powers of the government or the state. This This comes in the form of rights, fundamental rights. Every democratic country ensures through its constitution certain rights to its citizens. Those rights are inviolable. The state cannot encroach upon those rights. And these rights are the limits of the power of the state or the government. Now, this is something very abstract. The problem is how to ensure that. And therefore, we have got several mechanisms like separation of the powers, that the organs of the power are divided and different sorts of power so that they can check each other are given to them. Another is division of powers, that power is divided between a central authority and regional governments. And the very important thing is that there is the rule of law, that any command of the government must be backed by certain law. If there is no law supporting any action, that action is illegal, invalid. That is the rule of law, which ensures freedom of the individuals, that ensures the availability of all these rights, because here persons don't rule, laws rule. Laws are the supreme, and every person in any office, any authority is under the command of the laws. If there is no law, there can't be any action, there can't be any order or command. This is something which ensures that everybody has got their rights protected. Again, rule of law is there, but that also depends on certain ecology, some sort of environment without which no democracy, no rule of law can survive. For that, what you need is that a general approval of the democratic processes, general support of the rule of law, and for that, you must have a government which is backed by the people, by their willing consent, by their willing support, so that the government can function well and it can adhere to the norms of rule of law, constitutionalism, and, or in a short, the norms of a civilized society. Thus, what we find is that the consent of the people and their active participation in the government process or in the governance is very fundamental for the democratic life of the country. And the chief instrument of that, chief mechanism for that is the right to vote. If we don't vote, we are going to lose everything which we have gained so far. And there are 2-3 things which I would like to highlight in this context. First is that generally you are accustomed to the living conditions which prevail today in the present life. Therefore, we don't realize the importance of this democracy, this right to vote, the way we decide upon the nature or the form of the government. There is a long history of achieving this state in our lives, this type of conditions in our life. Across the continents, across the civilization, across the country, people have struggled to attain this stage of life presently. We all know about this freedom struggle of our country, India, that we fought for centuries against those powers which had established their rule over us, not in our interest, but in their own interest, which is known as colonialism. And this sort of struggle had happened everywhere. And this right to vote in this context, we must realize that is a result of a very prolonged struggle, for which many good people made their sacrifices. And after only that, you could achieve this right to vote. And you would be very surprised to know that this is something very new. Most of the countries gave this right to universal suffrage to their people in the last century only. You must be surprised to know, you don't know, that Switzerland is a country which is known as a democracy which is free of all the vices of democracy. In that country, as recent as in 1991, universal suffrage was accepted. There was some canton which had not given the right to vote to women till that point. In fact, most of the cantons gave the women the right to vote in the year 1972. Even in the United Kingdom, universal suffrage came into existence in 1928. You must be realizing that this is something very new in the history of civilization, that people are deciding their own destiny. And that exercise of deciding their destiny largely comes through their right to vote. By now, I have given you some idea of the background or the general context in which we have got this right to vote and the theoretical aspect of this democratic right of voting. This is something very unusual in the entire human history, that people have been given this right to decide their own way of living. And certainly this is the chief marker of our time. You are living in the best times of the human history, and we must be proud of this and exercise this right very carefully, so that we can give a better future to our coming generations. Because we owe this to our forefathers who had made so much sacrifices to give us this kind of world in which we can exercise our discretion for deciding upon our own lives. Now, I'm coming to certain very practical aspects of this right to vote. What is happening in our country? Often we see that we lament the state of politics in the country, that things are not working well. This is a habit among us, that we deride, we condemn the political processes. And many people get somehow disenchanted with the whole process and what they say, which I had talked about earlier, that they are not interested in politics. Politics is something bad. Basically, if such vices exist in society, there is somebody to blame for. And we must realize this, we must all realize this, that this is basically a fault of the people who vote. Suppose, if you see the records, there are records available, a large number of people with criminal background returned to parliament, state assemblies, and in that context, taking that into mind, into consideration, we cannot blame somebody else for the faults of democracy. Basically, this is a fault of the electorate who elect such kind of people into the largest decision-making body. Therefore, basically, the responsibility to getting the people in the government rests with the people. How does this happen? Basically, when we go to vote, we don't act responsibly. We don't take this very serious right seriously. That is the problem. Many people held to the allurement of bribes, some give and take, and they just waste their vote. And as a result of that, we don't get the kind of representative which we should have. There are other problems also in this context. See, that those who are vying for political power, apart from their public committedness, they are also driven by their private interests, and they would like to benefit from the power or the perks they enjoy. This is something unavoidable, because I had just quoted sometimes back that power corrupts. So those who have got position are likely to abuse that position if they are not checked. There are institutional mechanisms for that, but ultimately the responsibility rests with the people. If they are not active, if they are not concerned, then things are going to be very bad for us. In this context, I just would like to underline another issue, that if you view the history of India, for centuries, we had been slaves of other outsider forces, other civilizational people who came to India and ruled here without being challenged. What was the main reason behind that? Basically, the job of ruling was limited to certain people, and most of the people did not participate in the process of governance. They remained aloof from how the things are being run. And now India is an independent country, and you see that India is one of the largest country in the world. What keeps us together? What makes us a democracy? This is basically people's interest in the public affairs. People feel that they have a stake in the general governance of the country, general affairs of the country, because all the people who were not associated with the political processes earlier now have got their say and participation in the political processes. Basically, this the inclusiveness of the democratic process, which makes democracy a successful institution. Suppose people start losing interest in the political process, in the democratic processes, what would happen? That government, with the passing of time, would become authoritarian, and in that case, we'll have institutional decay, and that would lead to poverty of life. You must be watching many countries around. You can see Afghanistan right now. A government collapsed there, and those people who were earlier the opponents of the government, in a sense, who were not considered civilized enough to rule the country, they are now in power, and there's chaos in that country. And there's so many countries who are not so well governed, and people are suffering there. In contrast to those countries, there are countries which are very well governed. You have got Scandinavian countries like Sweden, Denmark, where life is very good. And there are many countries where civil wars are going on, people are dying of hunger, diseases. Where do all these things come to? That depends on how the people of that country take or participate in the political process. Basically, it is in the hands of the people to make life heavenly, as it is in the Scandinavian countries, or hell, as it may be in certain countries. The second thing is related to this is that democracy is not something always for a better kind of life. Suppose China is there, it is progressing very fast. It is rising to the level that it is now challenging the United States of America as the supreme power. But there is no democracy there. People don't have rights against the government, against the majority. And you may be knowing about the Uyghur Muslims, or there are so many minorities there which are being persecuted there, even Tibetans are there. Despite all the good, all the material benefits which they may be having, the life is something there which like people like us would not like to have, because there is no democracy, there is no freedom. What I want to say that democracy is also related with a sense of dignity, that being adults, we must not be ruled by somebody else, but by ourselves. This is a question of dignity, that we are self-ruling people, we are self-ruling persons. We may not be having all the facilities like a Chinese may be having, but we have this pride of being governed by ourselves. We are not ruled by some other forces which are alien to us. We have got our say, our way of life, and lot of autonomy and dignity in our personal life. And this, I think, is a crucial aspect. Now, I'm just another issue which I would like to raise, and thereafter I would stop. That in order to save this democratic process, it needs always a renewal effort. Things stagnate over time. And there is a famous saying that eternal watch is the safeguard of liberty. If you are not vigilant enough, our liberty which we have got is going to decay, and you are again likely to fall into the traps of slavery or servitude. Therefore, our constant activism is a very necessary precondition for safeguarding our liberty, our democracy. And what are the dangers to that awareness which makes us democratic, participative in the process? That we lack a civic and secular sense to an extent. The problem which we have is related to how do we compromise our civic and secular understanding of the reality. Civic, you understand, it's simple to, I can simplify this. Then when you take yourself as a citizen of a country, primarily, and not as a member of certain caste, member of a certain community or group, then you stand as a civic person, a citizen, as a citizen which is part of the country, which is responsible for the country. And second thing related to this is that you must take political decision, particularly the voting decision, getting ourselves free of emotions. Most of the times what happens, in place of people voting rationally, they just swayed away by these emotions. Certain people die, certain things happen, and their decisions are affected by that process. And secondly, I'm just repeating that we must not vote as a member of caste. Caste is something which is related to our cultural and social life, not our political life. And if we vote in that way, then the political leaders and political parties know what attracts people. Suppose if they see that people vote on the basis of caste, they will field a person of caste, not his ability. Those who have got mass appeal in the name of their caste going to be fielded in the elections, and they are going to be returned. This is the point I wanted to highlight, that when we vote, first thing is that we must vote, because ballots are more powerful than bullets. It has been said, I'm not saying this, it has been said that everybody wants a better life, that our lives should improve, and the best means for doing that is to vote. This is a difficult decision, because the candidates are hardly differentiable right now. We can't differentiate between the leaders which are supposed to elect, because we don't have the exceptional kind of persons who come to fight elections. But we will have to make a decision. We must take into consideration the party, the candidate, the agenda of the political party. All these things should be taken into consideration. It is going to be a very minute kind of decision that you cannot say something definitely, but that stands. You must take every little bit of the whole matrix into consideration, and after only that we should vote. Second thing is that if we vote rationally, try to judge the people who are fighting elections, only then the political party would field good candidates. If they think that caste matters, they will field candidates on the basis of caste. If they think that people with some muscle power, which we call bahubali, if they can win the elections, they will field such persons in the election. Therefore, we must make this scenario as such that the winnability factor of the candidate must be the goodness of the candidate, not of their such kind of caste, communal, or this background of being a powerful man. So you must desist such kind of tendency among ourselves, so that we have a good representative in the parliament or the state assemblies, And only by doing that, we can have a better kind of politics, which should lead to the betterment of our life. Now, I think I have spoken what I had to say. First thing is we must vote, and the second thing is that when we vote, we must vote responsibly. With these words, I end my.
Thank you so much, sir. You have rightly said that the voting, right to voting is not even the fundamental right, but it is a important right given under Indian Constitution. So one must vote, and it is a kind of appeal to every single voter, because one whosoever is actually attending the meeting on Zoom and one who is watching on live on YouTube. So like, we are the citizens of India and we have a right to vote, and that is a kind of a duty. So we have actually conducted this particular webinar to support the campaign held by like Election Commission of India, and we, the student of law, are definitely going to vote. And when it comes to the vote, so voting right is a very kind of a weapon of given to the citizens of India to make the government, to change the government. Sir, here are few questions. So I have received so many questions, but I know the time is very short. Actually, you have other assignment to do. So I have received only 3 questions as of now onto my paper. So the first question asked by Mudit Saraswat, and he just wanted to know, what is the value of recall the candidate? Is there any provisions to recall the candidate under Indian Constitution, so we can recall the candidate whom we have elected actually?
There is no such provision for the parliament or state assemblies. There are some such kind of provision in Panchayati Raj system, but that is something related to the local government. I think the Switzerland has got this, but such kind of provision is not visible in India because the country is too large and the number of electorates is also too large. And you can see the kind of atmosphere we have, that always there are elections and the government is not able to focus on the basic job of a governance. Too much elections occurring any time around the year is a major challenge for that country, and suggestions have come to consolidate the processes of electioneering. I don't think there is such possibility of being such a proposal being accepted in our country.
Thank you so much, sir. So the second question is related to right to vote specifically. Right to vote is a constitutional right or is a fundamental right under Indian Constitution?
It is contained in the Article 326. It's a constitutional provision, not a part of fundamental right.
Yes, sir. Sir, one more question is actually asked by Harshit Jaiswal, and he just wanted to know what is the concept of one nation, one election, because this is the kind of campaign which government was actually running in India. So specifically, he just wanted to know about one nation and one election concept.
Exactly, this was I was talking about when I answering the first question. You see that right now, just in the month of February, there are elections in three states. There are elections happening every time in the country, because in the beginning, the national elections, the elections to parliament, I mean the Lok Sabha and state assemblies took place together at the same time. But after some that cycle was discussed. Now, within this 5 years of the parliament, there is always some election of some state or other state, or some by-elections are happening every time. It affects the functioning of the government, because any government is not, in particular the central government, is always drawn to the issue of winning the next election. And therefore, they are not able to take long-term measures for the governance of the country, because their focus is ad hocist. Always there is some election is going to happen, and the central government is always drawn to that, because maintaining a majority is the chief challenge for the government in a parliamentary form of government. Because if a government gets weaker due to lesser support from the people, it challenges the legitimacy of the incumbent government. Therefore, there is a suggestion that the electioneering time of the states should be fixed those should be together with the national government, or should be 2 times fixed during fixed time. All the elections should take place of the parliament, of the state assemblies, and if possible, even of the local self-government. But this is a Herculean task, because for that we need a constitutional amendment, and for that a general agreement on this issue is necessary, because constitutional
Hello. Hello. Neeraj sir. Yeah. Yes, sir, you are
as far
audible.
as feasibility is concerned, it's a difficult goal to achieve.
Yes, sir. Sir, one more question. This particular question is asked by Assistant Professor Arun Kumar Tiwari, sir. So he just wanted to know how far Nota has changed the perception of the voters.
Please repeat the question. I could not hear.
The question asked by Assistant Professor Arun Tiwari, sir. He's asking how far Nota has changed the perception of the voters. None of the above.
Yes. The logic behind introducing Nota was that many people did not go to vote because they said their feeling was that no candidate suited to their taste. They did not find any person good enough to get their vote. In order to remove that dilemma, to remove that point of view, government introduced Nota, none of the above. Now, some people say that what's the use of voting for Nota, putting your ballot to Nota. In fact, there's a very good rationale behind that. Suppose if you don't go to vote, as you don't find any of the candidates suitable for your vote, in that case, it cannot be determined that the people are disenchanted by all the candidates. Blame would go to the particular voter that they are not interested in the politics, and that is something not good. Now they can record their disapproval of the kind of candidates which had been put forth by the parties. So this is something very important, that the person who is pressing the button of Nota, it's basically showing his or her disapproval of the candidates put forth by the party. And if such numbers go substantial, then it would be a cause for alarm for all the political parties. I think this is something positive, that in place of sitting at the home and not voting, one must record one's disapproval of the candidates. And that is, I think, something positive.
Thank you so much, sir. So I am coming to the last 2 questions. So the second last question of the webinar is asked by Assistant Professor Sarvesh Soni. He's from Madhav Law College, Gwalior. So his question is, how can the election process can be reformed?
Can be?
How the election process can reformed?
In fact, there have been several committees and measures. You see, over the years, things have improved a lot. And now there is recording of spendings, there are recording of the people. There were so many things have been, there is a ceiling on the money a party can spend or a candidate can spend. Over the years, the election process has improved a lot. Particularly after TN session, and things have started improving, and things have already improved a lot if you consider this process, if you compare this present state with the previous states. And secondly, there are so many questions being raised against this machine, EVM. That is also something very revolutionary. I have been associated with the election process, and what I know that it cannot be tempered, and it makes the election process very smooth. And one major problem which it had removed is the bogus voting. Earlier, there was a serious problem. And second thing is related with this EVM is that people say that it can be tempered. I don't think that this is a possibility. And as far as the elections by ballots are concerned, paper ballots are concerned, even then there was a lot of bungling in the election process. Ballots were, bogus ballots were inserted and counted, things like that. If this system is not immune from tampering, then the earlier system was also not immune from tampering. There were so many problems associated with the earlier problem. This is certainly an improvement, and having been associated with this election process, I know that this machine is not susceptible to or prone to tampering, as far as my knowledge goes. And this is an improvement. The larger issue, which in fact I tried to underscore in my lecture, is that people's consciousness, that people should think like an individual citizen, not a part of mob, some communal group, some caste group, some ethnic group. If they start to think like a citizen who believes in civic virtues, who practice civic virtues, then things are going to improve. I'm saying something very fundamental. That the first thing is a revolutionary change in the quality of education, revolutionary improvement in the quality of education. Only in that case, we will have a healthy republic. Republic means a form of government in which people are interested, people are active in the process of the government. In that condition only, we can have a better politics, better kind of government, and better process of electioneering. I think the fundamental changes are needed. No matter how much we do for the improving of election process, if people are not driven by civic virtues, things are not going to improve.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. Although the reforming the whole electoral system is a kind of like huge task, and it not would be done within a day. It will take time. And there will be the last question of the webinar. It is asked by our assistant professor Amit Kumar Mishra. He is the assistant professor in political science department. So he is asking, well, we have a right to vote. Every single citizen have right to vote in India. But what are the various remedies one have with the regards of loss of vote?
This is something related to the nitty-gritty of election process. I think Amit is asking about that. That somebody else has voted in place of you, which is called bogus voting. Am I right? Is it a question about bogus voting?
Yes, sir. It is.
There is a provision for that. Suppose somebody has already cast your vote, and you go to the election booth and find that your vote has already been exercised by somebody else. In that case, you go and demand to the presiding officer that I'm going to vote. Somebody has already voted for me. Despite that, I'm going to vote. Then they will issue you a ballot paper ballot. On that, you will cast your vote. And there is some provision. I'm forgetting that if the difference of winning has got certain number, certain ratio, in that case, those votes are actually counted. If the gap between the winning candidate and second candidate is narrow, there is a fixed percentage for that. I've forgotten that. In that case, those votes are being counted. Therefore, always demand that I have to vote. If the presiding officer says, no, your vote has already been cast, you don't need to, just resist that and demand the paper ballot for them, and they will give you.
Thank you so much, sir, for explaining all these questions. Actually, every single voter, I must say, they are not participants, they are actually voters. So they do have some curiosities in the mind to know more about this voting system in India specifically. Thank you so much, sir, for your kind wisdom, which you have shared with the audience. Now, I would like to invite Associate Professor, Head of the Department, Dr. Prabal Pratap Singh, sir, to propose a vote of thanks. Sir, over to you. Hello.
Prabal sir, please unmute.
Yes, sir, you are visible. Sir, you are not audible, sir.
So your audio is not connected, I understand. Yes, please try now.
Hello. Yes, sir. No, sir, it's not connected. So, shall I go ahead? Hello, Prabal sir, am I audible to you? Ma'am, I think his audio is not connected.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so can I go ahead, ma'am?
Yes, sir, please.
Yeah, on behalf of the Prestige Institute of Management and Research Gwalior, we are thankful to Dr. Neeraj Kumar Jha, Associate Professor Political Science. Yes, sir.
Am I?
Yes, sir. You are audible.
Okay,
Sir.
okay, sir.
Please, sir. Please. Sir.
Okay, sir.
Yes, sir. Please, you may
okay,
continue,
sir.
Please.
A very good afternoon to all. I feel honored and privileged to get opportunity to propose a vote of thanks on webinar, voting compulsory in democratic nation at Prestige Institute of Management and Research Gwalior. I, on behalf of Prestige Institute of Management and Research Gwalior, respected Director Dr. Nishan Joshi, Deputy Director Professor Dr. Tariq Asi, entire faculty colleagues, and my own behalf convey deep regard, heartily thanks to resource person of this webinar, Dr. Neeraj Kumar Jha sir, Associate Professor Political Science, MLB College Gwalior, for sharing their vision with us for developing legal knowledge to match the best in the world. I express my sincere gratefulness to Dr. Nishant Joshi sir and Dr. Tarika Singh, Deputy Director, Prestige Institute of Management and Research Gwalior, for his and her continuous guidance, support and motivation. I would also thank respected faculty colleagues, PMIR Gwalior, for their relentless and continuous support. I also thank PMIR Gwalior's students, volunteers for the support and relentless hard work. Alone we cannot do a little, together we can do so much. I finally convey thanks to the whole team of the Prestige Institute of Management and Research Gwalior for making this webinar successful. I convey thanks to IT department for providing constant support. Be assured to continue to work in the direction of creating knowledge in the field of legal education and research. Through this platform, I want to call upon all such scholars of law that if they want to hand over the best knowledge to new generation regarding their method, for this door of the law department, PIMR Gwalior, are open for all. Thank you. I have a great day ahead. Thank you very much. Over to Akash sir.
Thank you so much, sir. So moving ahead, I have written a few lines on this right to vote. So basically this is our right, लेकिन ये हम सब लोगों की जिम्मेदारी भी है, कर्तव्य भी है हमारा कि हम वोट डालें. तो कुछ पंक्तियां जो हैं वो इस विषय पर लिखी गई थी. ये पंक्तियां मैंने ही लिखी हैं, तो मैं आप लोगों के साथ साझा करना चाहूंगा. लोकतंत्र की मुखर आवाज मतदान. हर लोकतांत्रिक राष्ट्र की मजबूत आधारशिला है संविधान. वहीं नागरिकों की इच्छा अभिव्यक्ति का साधन है मतदान. एक सक्षम प्रत्याशी का चुनाव आखिर कहां होता है आसान, जनमानस की भावना का रखता हर प्रत्याशी पूरा ध्यान. संशोधित हुआ था संविधान 1989 में रखकर ये उद्देश्य, 18 वर्ष की आयु का व्यक्ति चुन सके सरकार जो चलाए देश। संवैधानिक अधिकार के तहत है ये मौजूद पवित्र संविधान में। कर्तव्य है भी अनिवार्यता हो मतदान करना, रखना है ध्यान में। शासक नहीं बल्कि जनता का चुनाव जनता के ही द्वारा है। शासक नहीं बल्कि जनता का चुनाव जनता के ही द्वारा है। मतदान करने हेतु निर्वाचन आयोग ने नागरिकों को पुकारा है। मतदान करने हेतु निर्वाचन आयोग ने नागरिकों को पुकारा है। So on behalf of the institute, I would like to wish you a very happy 73rd Happy Republic Day in advance. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat. Can we close the session now? Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir, Neeraj sir, for being with us. Yes, sir.